As we begin 2020, a new year and a new decade, what a great time to go back and look at the greatest Major League Baseball players of the previous decade. This will be the first of probably many videos done by Curious Perro focusing on baseball, one of my favorite subjects. So let's jump right in and start with the Major League Baseball's all-decade first baseman. Now, for me, this is quite an obvious choice, but we will, on each of these, present you both a runners-up as well as the number one person with regards to the position. With each of these positions, not only is it important that the player have a very, very good regular seasons during the decade, but also that they're influential with regards to the playoffs and their team's winning of the World Series. So that is kind of the underlining factor with regards to what makes the player great. So let's get started with first base. Our runner-up at first base with 1 MVP and 6 times top 4 voting in the MVP in the National League, 6 All-Star appearances and 1 Golden Glove is Joey Votto. Votto was tremendous during the regular season, statistically a great player. Unfortunately, he probably never, I didn't look exactly, but playing for Cincinnati Reds, I don't believe he was in the playoffs at all. Joey Votto. The number one selection at first base, and as I said, without question, is the gentleman who won the Triple Crown, Miguel Cabrera. When I was a kid, Carl Yastrzemski won the Triple Crown, the only person in modern day, at least my modern day baseball had. I was too young to even know about it. It was when I was probably 6-7 years old. But in addition to winning the Triple Crown, Miguel Cabrera had 2 MVP wins in the American League, 7-time All-Star, and 2 other times he was in the top 5 voting of the MVP. So without a doubt, in my opinion, the best first baseman during the previous decade was Miguel Cabrera. Now on to second base. This one statistically was a little more difficult, and you'll see why I gave the winner as I did. The number 2 and runner-up at second base, Robinson Cano. Not much with regards to postseason during the decade. However, he did have 7 All-Star selections, 2 Gold Gloves, and he was in the top 4 selections of the MVP 5 times without a win. He played for a number of teams, very good player, and a number of people select him as the number 1, but not in my case. My selection for the number 1 second baseman of the decade, Jose Altuve. So statistically, he may not be as good as Robinson Cano, and in fact, my Puerto Rican baseball insider, who's currently on vacation, had said that he thinks statistically it's Robinson Cano. But Altuve, with the Houston Astros winning a World Series and he won an MVP, I think he's much deserved. In addition to that, 6 All-Star voting in. Actually, I take that back, 7. And 1 Gold Glove. He was also voted in the top 3 of the MVP 1 other time. My second baseman of the decade, Jose Altuve. Our next position, third base, Major League Baseball all-decade third baseman. And my selection for the runner-up is Adrian Beltre. There were a number of players mentioned as the potentials. Evan Longoria, Josh Donaldson. Even some folks felt that Beltre should have been the number 1, but in my case, no. He is a future Hall of Famer, 4-time All-Star, 3 Gold Gloves, made the game really fun to watch, and he had 1 top finish in the, 1-time vote in the top 5 of the MVP. Adrian Beltre. Number 1 selection at third base is Nolan Arenado. A little bit difficult because he really, I don't think, has peaked out yet. But as a Rockies third baseman, he gets a lot of people who say, oh, he hits in Coors Field, so that doesn't count. But you have to take into account his other prowess with regards to defense. 5-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger, 7 times Gold Glove. He led the National League in home runs 3 years and 2 years in RBIs. Number 1 pick at third base, Nolan Arenado. Now on to our next position, shortstop, our Major League Baseball all-decade shortstop. I have selected as our runner-up, currently the best shortstop in baseball, Francisco Lindor, though personally I like Correa over at the Astros, but again, my Puerto Rican baseball insider picks Francisco Lindor. 4-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, 2-time Silver Slugger, and twice in the top 6 of the MVP voting. Francisco Lindor. Number 1 pick at shortstop, Troy Tulowitzki. Troy was an absolute powerhouse in the early part of the decade. He had 5 All-Star selections, 2 Gold Gloves, 2-time Silver Slugger at shortstop, and 2 top 5 MVP finishes. My number 1 shortstop of the decade, Troy Tulowitzki. MLB's all-decade catcher. There's really 2 very, very, very good catchers here, and I had to make a selection. I did it based on World Series wins. My number 2 selection for catcher, Yadier Molina. Yadier has 1 World Series win in 2011, but the St. Louis Cardinals did win 2 National League championships during the decade. In addition to that, he is an 8-time Gold Glove Award winner, 8-time All-Star, and top 4 finisher in the MVP twice. Yadier Molina. Question is he the greatest catcher from Puerto Rico? I'll have to defer to my, again, Puerto Rican baseball insider for that answer. The number 1 catcher of the decade, Buster Posey, with 3 World Series wins with the San Francisco Giants. He was National League MVP in 2012, as well as the National League batting champ in 2012. The Giants won the World Series in 2010, 12, and 14. Posey, in addition to that, was a 6-time All-Star and a 1-time Gold Glove. Number 1 catcher of Major League Baseball in the previous decade, Buster Posey. Next position is outfielder, and really by far the hardest position to vote. There's some questions of whether you should pick the top 3 outfielders, or should you pick the best outfielder from each position, being left field, center field, and right field. There's no question, I believe, of who the best outfielder is. The question is the runners-up. Let's take a look at Major League Baseball's all-decade outfielders. The third runner-up, Andrew McCutchen. National League MVP with the Pittsburgh Pirates, once. 5-time All-Star, 1-time Gold Glove, and 3 top 5 MVP selections. Andrew McCutchen. Second runner-up, Giancarlo Stanton, also an MVP, and 1 MVP runner-up and 4 All-Star selections. Giancarlo Stanton. The number 1 outfielder and the number 1 player of the decade, Mike Trout. 3-time MVP of the American League in 2014, 16, and 19. 4-time runner-up in the MVP. 8-time All-Star in 8 seasons of Major League Baseball. And 7-time Silver Slugger. Mike Trout. Now on to our pitchers. Major League Baseball's all-decade starting pitchers. I'm going to give you a 2A and 2B, our two runners up. They are going to be Clayton Kershaw and Justin Verlander. This is an area of a lot of debate. And again, let me remind you that my number one criteria is playoffs, postseason, World Series. So Justin Verlander, two-time Cy Young Award winner in 2011 and 2019. He had an MVP, yes, a pitcher with an MVP in 2011, five-time All-Star, and he won one ERA title. Also World Series champion with the Houston Astros. First runner-up, Clayton Kershaw, three-time Cy Young Award winner, 2011, 13, and 14, and again a pitcher with an MVP in 2014. Seven-time All-Star, 5 ERA titles. The best regular season pitcher of the decade, Clayton Kershaw. And my number one pitcher of the decade, Madison Bumgarner. 3 World Series championships, 2010, 12, 14 with the San Francisco Giants. 2014 World Series MVP. He had 3 top 6 Cy Young finishes, 4 All-Star games. He was 4-0 with a .25 ERA in the World Series, 2-time Silver Slugger. My pitcher, due to World Series wins of the decade, Madison Bumgarner. Major League Baseball's all-decade closer. Number one runner-up in this position is Craig Kimbrell. He had 4 top 6 Cy Young finishes, 7 All-Stars selections, and World Series wins with the Boston Red Sox in 2018. Number one closer, Aroldis Chapman. 6 All-Star appearances and 1 World Series win with the Cubs in 2016. Number one closer of the decade, Aroldis Chapman. And our final position, the Major League Baseball's all-decade designated hitter, obviously from the American League. First runner-up, Nelson Cruz, 5-time All-Star, American League Championship MVP in 2011 with the Texas Rangers, and 3-time Silver Slugger. Nelson Cruz has played with the Rangers, the Orioles, the Mariners, and the Twins throughout the decade. The number one designated hitter of the decade, David Ortiz. Now, I want to point out that the statistics I'm about to read you are for our previous decade, not over his career. Over the previous decade, David Ortiz, 5-time All-Star, 1 World Series win with the Boston Red Sox, and the MVP in 2013 of the World Series, 3-time Silver Slugger. David Ortiz last appeared in uniform October 2nd, 2016. The number one designated hitter of the decade, David Ortiz. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Curious Perro, and I will provide you with diverse and interesting content with videos like this and others. Feel free to look at all the videos that I have posted, and I'll be posting more, probably about 1 a week, maybe 2. Thank you very much. This has been Major League Baseball's all-decade team, 2010 through 2019. Thank you very much.